What's up, guys? We're back with the rating climb. We're 1085, and we're gonna see if we can cross 1100 in this video. Now, we're playing in 1118. 1100s and 1000 rated players, I'm expecting about the same as far as like maybe one or two big mistakes each game. And so we're going to keep an eye out for that. I am going to play a tricky line here, knight to e7. This is called a cozio defense. This is one that I've studied a little bit. It's kind of a unique way to play because normally people are bringing out the bishop. They're playing a6. They're playing knight f6. This one, we jump our knight over to g6 right away. And one interesting thing about this is that it defends the e5 pawn. So a lot of times you have to watch out for this because the bishop might trade and you might lose a pawn. In this case, we have it defended. The other interesting thing about this idea is that this knight sometimes can attack the king depending on how the game goes. Now, right now, this would just simply be a trade, also probably just a trade, but we're going to keep an eye out for opportunities to potentially use this knight to attack the king. D3 is a very, just kind of a solid but passive move. A more aggressive approach would be D4. So I'm thinking, where do I want to put my bishop? One option is C5. The issue with C5 sometimes is that after C3, you would end up getting chased away, either with D4 or B4, and you have to leave. So I think I might just go to E2, get control of this diagonal, and the bishop doesn't really become a target. If I am going to do that, it does open up the option for me to castle, and we'll see what white's going to do. Okay, so they do capture, and you can see here, it's good that we have the knight here. Otherwise, this pawn would be, we would potentially lose the pawn. So I'm going to take this way because it opens up my queen along the d file and also lets out my bishop right away. So a lot of times there's a rule in chess where you want to capture towards the center. It's good to bring pawns towards the center. I think this is one exception to that rule where when you're trying to complete your development quickly, you want to let that bishop out. Okay, so d4, interesting move by our opponent because they just played d3 and now they're playing d4. So, I think they have a good idea of like they're castled, I'm not, so why not open up the center? They're just a little bit slow and they kind of wasted one move by doing that. So, but that being said, let's think about this. We can take it, we can leave it and just go with like bishop g4 to pin the knight, which I do like. One of the questions that you want to ask yourself is if they attack your bishop, what are you going to do? I think I would be happy to simply trade and win a pawn here. The other thing is what happens if they take here. I think I would be happy to actually probably trade the queens and then capture here with the pin. That looks pretty good. Does white have any other moves that would scare me? I don't believe so. So I think I do like that aggressive placement and putting that bishop right on g4. Somebody made a comment that I was getting low on time in some of the previous games, and you're absolutely right. So I will try to move a little bit quicker because as we get to these stronger and stronger players, at some point I'm going to start needing that extra time. Okay, so they do take. So here we have an interesting decision. We can take with the knight right away and just leave the tension between the queens, or we can just trade. So I want to take advantage of the pin, and that's what I'm trying to think through. If I take with the knight, I believe white has the option to simply trade, and then they could just take my knight, which looks like I just lose a piece. But I can't do that. But I think I do have to take this way and then take, and then we'll have the pin on that rook. So if we lose our knight, we'll get a rook, which is a good trade. I think that's the way to go. I guess I could also just like castle and leave that to maybe capture later, but I don't think I'm going to do that. Yeah, I think I am going to go ahead and trade the queens. So here we go. And like I said, I just want to take advantage of the pin. This looks like the best way to do it. So knight takes here, I believe, is the move. And white has to deal with this threat. And it's not that easy to do because if you play knight here, what I'm thinking about doing is actually castling queenside. And now I have another pin on that knight. And white is starting to get all jammed up here. Okay, well, they just go for this, which looks like it just loses in exchange right away. So there we go. We'll take that, and we're happy now. I mean, it wasn't going to be good for white either way because that was a very annoying pin. But this is just a simple, we win some material and the game goes on. Okay, so do I want to win another pawn? I can trade and capture this. The other option is I would just maybe castle, get my king out of the center and start using my rooks. I mean, a pawn is a pawn. It also messes up white's pawn structure, and so I think I will. I mean, I don't see a reason to not go ahead and go for that. All right. attacking here. And I'm still looking to probably castle. I can't castle queenside anymore, or I would get forked. So probably castling kingside, or maybe chasing the knight away first, and then I could castle queenside. Okay, bishop to f4. So here's an example of where it might be a mistake to go pawn hunting. So if I grab this, what's white most likely going to do? Probably rook to e1, lining up on my king and my bishop. And if I move my bishop, they now have a discovered attack with the knight, which could get very dangerous, and I could lose a rook. So definitely not worth it to capture a pawn in that situation. So I think I am going to play f6, make that knight move. Not sure where it would go to. Maybe here, or here. And then castle queenside, which would defend my pawn and activate my rook. I really like the look of that. I don't see any moves for white that would really concern me. So let's go ahead and play f6. You know, if you have an opportunity to chase away a very powerful knight that's just sitting in the center of the board, why not go ahead and do it, right? That's kind of my mindset here. This move doesn't really create any weaknesses for me. You know, normally the diagonal here and here, but in this case, does white have a bishop that can control those squares? No. The queens are gone, so there's really no problem with me playing that move. Okay, knight to c4, and like I mentioned, bishop's attacking the pawn. I think the easiest thing is to simply castle queenside. So I'm doing two things at the same time, getting my king out of the center and defending. Really three things, also putting a rook here, connecting my rooks, lots of things at the same time. I can probably come here. Okay, so white's still not defending that pawn, and now I will take it, right? Before I didn't want to because I didn't want to get pinned or something happen with my king in the center, but now that our king is off to the side, makes perfect sense to just take this right now. Okay, let's retreat. Where do we want to retreat to? I think I'm going to go here. Why do I like this square? Number one, it attacks some stuff, right? You can see these pieces I'm attacking. Also, it's defended by my pawn. So I don't have to worry about this bishop ever something happening where I lose my bishop, right? Worst case, it would just be a trade, all right? So that's good, and I think I will take this pawn. I'm just checking, are there any tactics or anything I have to be aware of? I don't think so. I'll take the free pawn. At the end of the game, pawns are more valuable, right? So this is a big deal, taking all these pawns. Those pawns are going to become queens at some point. All right, and we do get the resignation. Okay. Let's check the game review. I think we played that one very well. Let's see. Yeah, 96. Opponent didn't play bad, but like I mentioned, let me turn this off. We're still seeing a couple of mistakes here and there, right? Which we saw like right here. Our opponent just took the knight and allowed us to do this. What I was going to say in the game, I was expecting knight here. And I was going to castle with the idea that I still have this pin here. Also have a pin here so that this knight can't move. And yeah, I guess if white were to have gotten out of both of those pins, the game would go on. Probably I would have traded off maybe something like this to mess up the pawn structure, and the game goes on. And white would have been fine. But like I mentioned, we did see that big mistake, and then it was just a matter of kind of finishing out the game from there. All right, let's play one more game, and that should put us over 1100. Let's see, 9 points. Yes, that'll do it. So if we win this game, we will be over 1100. D4. All right, let's just play D5. Ah, so we're going to see a London. Okay. So how do I want to play against the London? I think the typical approach is you play like C5 and you kind of sort of attack that way. So yeah, we'll try that out. I don't really play this very much for black, but I believe you're just supposed to kind of strike with C5 right away. And at some point the queen comes over and you start trying to put pressure on some of these things. So let's see. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and bring the queen out right away. And, you know, when you play the London, you bring your bishop out, which means this pawn is undefended. That's kind of what we're trying to take advantage of, just attacking it right away. Okay, b3 does stop that, but it also weakens these dark squares. So I'm going to be looking to take advantage of that. Now, how exactly am I going to do that? I'm thinking about bringing my bishop here at some point. So e6 to let my bishop out looks like a move, but do I really want to block in my bishop? I think I'd rather have that out. So let me just think where to put it. Let's go to f5. And now I'm thinking about playing e6, and maybe we can take advantage of these light squares. Okay, bishop d3. So, of course, we could trade. We could go back, or we could jump something into e4. I don't like the look of that, because I was thinking about maybe trying to pair a knight and a bishop here anyway. So maybe I just jump my knight in there. And of course, if white wants to give up the bishop, I would be happy. I'd have the bishop pair. And so, yeah, I think I will do that. Jump that knight in. And I am thinking e6, trade here, bishop to b4 check might be very annoying for white. Now, they're probably going to castle before that happens. But, you know, I'm just keeping an eye on it in case I can throw in that move. Even maybe queen a5 check could be an idea now that I have my knight here. If you imagine like this, the knight goes here. Maybe I can hop my knight to c3, attacks the queen. Like it could be kind of tricky for white. So we'll see if they're going to go ahead and castle. Well, our opponent is either thinking for a very long time or they've disconnected and are just going to lose on time, which is what it's looking like, unfortunately. And yeah, there's the auto resign in 10 seconds. So I guess we'll play one more game since this really wasn't much of a game here. All right, well, it does put us over 1100, although, like I said, not much of a game. Let's play one more to finish off this video. All right, play e4. Scandinavian, we'll go ahead and take it. And I don't want to defend. I don't like playing against the Icelandic gambit. I just feel like it gives all the fun to black. And since I haven't ever studied it from the white perspective, that's not how I want to play. I will play bishop to b5 check. This one's kind of annoying. And the point is black's trying to recapture this pawn. But if they put a piece here, like a knight or a bishop, then I'll probably go back and they can't take it back immediately. So it's kind of an annoying line, especially for players who are unfamiliar with it. Yeah, bishop d7 is pretty common. Now we just drop back and we defend the pawn, and black has to figure out how are they going to take it. Yeah, that's actually one of the main lines, I think. So we'll drop the bishop back, and I think, yeah, bishop f5. I think we've played this before actually in this series. And one of the points that I talked about was if I try to play knight c3 to defend this, black has b4 to chase my knight away, and they can get this pawn right back. So what do we play here? Probably just develop normally. I don't think we need to do anything too fancy. So I'm just going to play knight to f3. Yes, black's going to get their pawn back. That's to be expected. And I think I might just castle and just get my king out of the center right away. So I'm thinking how I want to develop. The rook's probably going to go on e1. The pawn, we could go to d3 or d4. So the nice thing about d3 is it kind of shuts down this bishop. Also, it's not really a target because it's defended very nicely by a pawn. If I go to d4, it's more aggressive. I get more space, get more of a clamp here. But then sometimes this pawn actually can become a target for black. And also it allows this bishop to just kind of stay there. So both have their merits. I think what I will do is actually just play rook to e1 and see what black's going to do, and then make that decision on where I want the pawn to go. Okay, so now, since I can play d4 with a tempo, I like the look of that right away. So, you know, again, when you can do two things at the same time, it's usually a good idea. So I wanted to move this pawn somewhere anyway. The fact that I can do this one and gain a tempo on the bishop, basically like a free move. Black can't castle, black can't develop a knight or make a threat. They have to spend a move retreating the bishop, which I'm pretty happy to see. Okay. So, you know, I'm just scanning. These pieces are essentially not defended by the pawn because the rook is there. So I'm looking. Of course, it's defended, so I can't really do that right at the moment. But I am kind of paying attention, trying to see if there's a way that I can take advantage of that before black castles. I don't think so. I don't think there's really anything I can do. So what do we want to do? Let's see. Knight to c3 takes. Kind of like actually having that extra pawn there to defend this. I could also just play c3 and defend it that way and bring my knight over here. This bishop can go to g5. Am I worried about f6, or is that actually a weakening move? I think it's actually kind of a weakening move for black, so I might play bishop g5 to induce f6. And why do I say it's a weakening move? Well, if you think, if black's about to castle, look at my bishop lined up here on the king. And by that pawn being moved forward, well, all of a sudden it opens up potentially some tactical ideas. So I think I will do that. I think I will play bishop g5, see if we can induce black to play f6. Of course, they don't have to. But if not, I mean, I still developed my bishop, which is a good thing anyway. Okay, they do play f6. So I'm pretty happy to see that. I think I'm going to go back here. Could also just come all the way back to like d2. The question here is, can they play g5 G4, not really concerned about that. What about G5 followed by H5 and just launch an attack? Am I worried about that? Yeah, I don't think so because I think G5 is too risky of a move. And what I'm actually thinking is maybe I can even sacrifice here. The pawn takes, the queen comes over with check. I'm expecting bishop G6, but then rook takes E6 with check. It's going to get wild. I think I like the look of it enough to go ahead and play bishop H4. So sometimes, especially in these quicker games, you know, we have 10 minutes for the whole game. This is not like I have hours and hours. I saw enough that I was going to be happy with the attack. I thought if they played G5, I didn't analyze everything. I just looked enough to see like, okay, it looks like I'm definitely getting some compensation. I'll analyze those lines later if it comes to that. But you can see I saved some time, and of course black didn't even play it, so it didn't really matter. All right, so now I'm looking at this. And how do we take advantage of this? Because there's a knight, there's a pawn, there's a bishop over here, the king is lined up, my rook is lined up. Whenever you see multiple things like that, you want to look if there's tactics. That's what I'm kind of thinking through. Maybe knight c3 to put some more pressure here because we do have the threat here. It's pretty good. Also gets my piece out, which is what I want to do anyway. Also attacks this, so I think I like that. Now there is going to be c6. Looks like a pretty nice defensive move for black. I might not have anything after that, but I'm still happy that I'm, developed all my pieces and we can move on with the game. Aha, so here we go. Looks like a mistake from our opponent, forgetting about this pawn. And you could see the idea now of baiting f6. I think we just take a free pawn here. Takes, takes, takes. This is defended. This is defended twice, so I'm not worried about that. And I don't see any reason to not do that. So here we go. That was a minor mistake, but it was still a mistake. And like I mentioned, usually you're going to see at least one or two of these every game against a 1,000 or 1,100 rated player. So I was just waiting for it. I was ready. And now I'm going to, be happy with my extra pawn. And now trading pieces and going into an endgame makes a lot more sense because I'm up a pawn. I would be pretty comfortable that I could probably win that game easier. Okay, so our rook is under attack. Probably should defend that. I'm thinking about queen to e2 because I like the idea of creating a battery here. It gives me options to come down and invade. The issue is, what about my pawn here? Is the bishop going to take it? I'm not actually sure because I would have rook to d1, which is a pin. There might be c5. And then what would I do? I'm trying to see if I have a good follow-up. There's also, I could just ignore that and play rook e7. Where does the queen need to go? Probably back here or here. Probably d8, because here I could attack it again, expecting the queen to go here. That looks like a very nice position. Then I could bring my rook over. And on c5, I could actually take here. So this is a little bit more complicated of a position. But basically what I'm noticing is that if black tries to get their pawn back, they're going to be putting themselves into all kinds of trouble. So with that in mind, I think I am going to play the move queen to e2. And also, even a simpler option is that if I wanted to, I could just take this pawn too. I'm noticing that as well. Very complicated position now, but it looks like black's in trouble if they take this pawn. So yeah, with that in mind, creating batteries is usually a pretty good idea. You can see I already have rook e7 as an idea. And if that queen has to move back, then maybe I come in with check. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to think about, do I have any checkmating ideas? Very dangerous position for black. I might even just triple up the battery here. Okay, they play knight c6. Interesting move because it does stop rook e7. It does put another attacker here. So a lot of things going through my mind right now. Number one is like, maybe I just want to try to defend this. So like a move like rook d1. But I'm also thinking I could take this, which also kind of defends. And I'm also thinking, what about this knight? What if I play a3? Where's the knight going to go to? Because if it goes over here to a6, then queen takes is like a fork on the knights. Looks pretty good to me. So if I play a3, maybe the knight has to go back to d5. But then what's my follow-up going to be? Maybe I still just take over here. But my rook might be hanging. Very complicated position. So what I do like about this is that I could, after all that happens, I could play c3. Really solidify my pawn here. Which I do like. So I think I will play this move to chase away the knight. Expecting knight to d5. And I think what I'm going to do is just take and play c3. I wanted to do something like this, but then I lose my rook, which is not really ideal. think what I will probably do is just trade, play c3, really just solidify. They go for this, which, as far as I can tell, is another one of those mistakes that we're talking about. Because the knight's going to be hanging if the bishop takes. I guess the queen could take an attack over here, which is an idea that I didn't consider. Ah, but there's rook e4, so it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah, so another good example of, my opponent's making some significant mistakes here, and I think they're about to lose a piece. Now, this is a tricky position, so I can't really blame my opponent for this one. This is very, very, very tricky. Lots of moves to consider. In a 10-minute game, it's not easy. What it looks like if they take with the bishop, very simple. I just take the knight. They take with the queen, which is maybe what their idea was, thinking that they could take over here. I'm going to, instead of taking right away, I'm going to throw in this move rook to e4 first. It's called an in-between move in chess. It's like, instead of playing the obvious move, you play something in between first, and then you play the obvious move. And black's going to have to save the queen. And then after that, I will simply take the knight. Wow, what a move by our opponent. So trying to get clever with, if I take, they take. And I don't even think that works because I could take here. But I don't even have to do that. I can just simply take the rook. And that's just like checkmate. So that's the easy thing. And there we go. So, again, kind of similar story, right? Opponent played pretty well. Okay, good move by our opponent. Good move by our opponent. Good move by our opponent. Good move. Good move. Good move. Yeah, questionable move. Not bad, but questionable because you lose a tempo. Okay, good move. Decent move, although it did create some weaknesses here that I think they weren't quite prepared for. But okay, good move. They castled. Okay, maybe a little questionable here because they lost the pawn. It's not like a huge mistake in that they're losing a piece, but it's still a mistake, right? Kind of like I was expecting, maybe one mistake there. And then really kind of fell apart here when the tactics got kind of difficult, right? Like right around here. By the way, was a3 the best move? It was a pretty good move. Yeah, it was a pretty good move. Yeah, right here. That was just a mistake. It just didn't work, and they lost a piece, right? And then it cost them the game. And then here, tried to get crazy, but yeah, even if they would have played a better move here, like save the queen somehow, they're in trouble. Yeah, the engine is saying knight takes c2 is the best move, just giving up the queen, because black didn't really have any good options. But the point is, look for those mistakes. If you're rated 1,000 or 1,100, they're going to happen. But the key is, I, for the most part, played this game without losing any of my pieces. I didn't make any of those big mistakes. That's how I'm able to win. If I'm making those mistakes, I'm not going to be able to win these games. So that's kind of one of the key things about getting past 1,100 is playing the entire game consistently and not making those mistakes. And of course, that's easier said than done, right? So don't feel bad if you haven't mastered that yet, but that's what you want to work towards. You want to sit down every time you play a game like, okay, I'm going to play every single move in this game without blundering any of my major pieces. You lose a pawn, usually it's not the end of the world, but don't blunder any pieces. And like I said, it's easier to say that, right? When you get into a position like this, where it starts getting crazy, there's a lot to calculate. And that's, it comes with practice. It comes with working on your tactics. It comes with experience. But, yeah, anyway, I hope that helps you guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.